Hey guys, it's Hybrid, and today I'm doing my Green Lantern reboot sequel titled Rage of the Red Lantern. Now, if you haven't heard my Green Lantern reboot titled Emerald Knight yet, go check that out because you will probably not understand fully everything. Like the way I wrote this sequel, you could catch on pretty quickly, and I will like comment very briefly on stuff just in case. But for the most part, I highly recommend you watch it. I know it's not the shortest video out there, but if you really want to check out this one and fully all the way understand everything in it, that's the way to go. So without further ado, let's begin. Taking place a few months after Green Lantern Emerald Knight, we go to Hal Jordan and Kilowog fighting Arkillo, who in my film universe is a greatly feared general throughout Space Sector 674, who has been conquering planets illegally, like weaker planets. And by the way, Space Sector 674 is Kilowog's sector. So having trouble against having trouble against Arkillo and his army, they call for backup. Now, Hal Jordan obviously calls his partner Sinestro. So then we cut to Sinestro, who is in Korugar, his home planet, and we see us now under his strict leadership, in fear of his power, and basically they're afraid of his power as a Green Lantern. We learn that him kind of basically doing this whole strict dictatorship and ruling under fear is because of the massacre that happened in Green Lantern Emerald Knight, and that made Sinestro worried about his home planet. Like, who's going to protect his home planet from someone massacring it, like the Manhunters massacred the planet from the first movie? So he's also being persuaded though by a mysterious voice. Now we will learn who this voice is later. Basically, if you haven't seen Emerald Knight, there have been mysterious voices talking to certain lanterns and certain beings, and that is, we'll build up to that. By the third film, you will fully know what's going on. Sinestro does what Sinestro does. He gives a speech about how safe Korugar is now under his direct leadership and protection. We see now that Sinestro gets that call from Hal Jordan, but he ignores it. So he deems it not important at this moment, which will come back to haunt him later. So then we go back to Hal Jordan and Kilowog, now who are with about 30 more lanterns pushing back Arkillo's army, and even they defeat Arkillo. So Kilowog and about 2 other Green Lanterns take Arkillo back to Oa, while Hal Jordan goes to find Sinestro, who, his partner, he's wondering why did my partner not come to help me when I needed help. So tracing his ring, he reaches Korugar, where he sees what Sinestro has been doing for the past few months, because no one knew about this. No one really keeps tabs on them that much, and obviously Hal Jordan sees this, and he needs to report this because Sinestro is abusing his power as a Green Lantern to make a planet submit to him, which is wrong. Sinestro denies that what he's doing is wrong because in his mind, what he's doing is right. And in a way, you can kind of sympathize with him because all he wants to do is protect his planet, but he's kind of doing it in a very extreme way. Hal and Sinestro get into a brief fight where Sinestro does have the edge because experience-wise, he is better than Hal Jordan. He captures Hal, and essentially you think he's about to kill Hal until Hal asks, would Abin Sur, who was Sinestro's mentor, he looked up to him a lot, would Abin Sur approve of what Sinestro is doing? That shocks Sinestro a little bit, letting Hal Jordan return to Earth. Or not Earth, Oa. Sorry, it's really early. I always type these up like at night after I get off work, and then I record them in the morning, and because of that, I might say things kind of oddly. So I apologize in advance. But at this moment, we then go to a space bar where a soldier in Arkillo's army that survived and escaped actually during that fight is, talking about the Green Lanterns, the power they have and their rings, and how there's no way to stop them at all, fight back, etc. But a cloaked figure interrupts him, who talks about how he knows how to stop them, he knows how to get revenge on the Green Lantern Corps. And the soldier asks how, and the cloaked stranger responds by telling him to journey with him, to see the secret weapon he has. So on the planet Uzmal, who, if you guys are comic book fans, you'll understand the reference there. But we see a red lantern, not on by any means, but it's like a dead Green Lantern, and it's seemingly filled with blood. And I mean, let me be more specific. It's a basically drained out of power lantern that a Green Lantern would use. So a dead Green Lantern somewhere, its lantern and ring got confiscated by this cloaked figure, and it's been filled with blood. At this moment, the cloaked stranger kills the soldier and drains his blood into the lantern, filling it up. And then the cloaked stranger takes off his cloak, revealing himself to be Atrocitus. And he's, being persuaded by this another voice. This not exactly the same voice we heard in the first movie, but it's a different voice. It sounds really angry. And I'm just gonna say it now. It's these voices are actually the entities of the emotional spectrum. So the one talking to Sinestro, you'll learn later in the film. I wouldn't spoil this actually in the movie though, but just for the sake of telling you guys, because I know a lot of you are probably confused by different voice 1, different voice 2. The voice talking to Atrocitus is the embodiment of rage. I'm not going to spoil who Sinestro's is yet, but I think it's kind of obvious. But anyways, after a brief moment, he remembers the Manhunters massacring his people. His whole home planet is dead. And, just that rage. He remembers that rage. And Atrocitus says the Red Lantern Oath. Listening to what the voice is telling him, which causes that dead green. And by the way, he has a dead Green Lantern power ring on as well, and he says the Red Lantern Oath, and all that blood that's in that dead lantern starts to boil, and it ignites, and transforms that Green Lantern to a Red Lantern, and in turn, the red light power goes to the ring he has on, transforms it to a Red Lantern ring. And then we see the transformation of Atrocitus from just Atrocitus to Red Lantern Atrocitus. And he's just screaming he will get revenge on the Guardians for the murder of his people. Because obviously he blames the massacre on the Guardians because the Guardians made the Manhunters. And, we have the red plasma, just spewing out of his mouth. And it's quite an interesting sight, I must say. And it's pretty brutal. Probably just the whole thing where he kills the guy, kills the soldier, and then he drains his blood into the lantern. I think that alone will give it a rated R, rating. So I'm not holding anything back. This is a mass murderer we're talking about. So I don't think he would, kill anybody nicely, if you could put it that way. Back on Noah, Sinestro is under review for how Jordan has reported, and also for ignoring a distress call from his partner. So the verdict is that Sinestro abused his power as a Green Lantern to take over Koregar, and he will be suspended until further notice, with his actual lantern confiscated, just so Sinestro will have enough power to fly back to Koregar before his ring runs out of energy. So it kind of sucks, but this angers Sinestro because he deems the Guardians fools and idiots for not seeing how what he's doing is right for his planet. And with an escort of 2 other Green Lanterns, he heads off to Koregar to begin his suspension. Now, back to Hal Jordan, he is told that until he receives a new partner, he may return, and a new mission, I guess, he may return to his home space sector to, patrol that space sector again until further notice as well, which is a happy moment because Hal hasn't been back home for chronologically over 2 years. He's man, I can finally go home. But at this moment, the happy time is cut short when Atrocitus just arrives raining hell on Oa in his quest to reach the Guardians. Now, this is a big deal, first off, because nobody reaches Oa unless someone wants you to reach Oa. Only Green Lanterns reach Oa because Oa has a protective system and all that stuff. So Atrocitus just went flying right through the protective system, landing on Oa. So he's automatically a threat. So several Green Lanterns, most of them sadly recruits, go to stop Atrocitus, but with his newfound red power, he kills them all. And shortly after killing those Green Lanterns, he takes their rings and converts them into Red Lantern rings as well, in a manner similarly to how he created the original Red Lantern lantern and Red Lantern ring. So he takes their blood and converts the rings. It gives them to several prisoners on Oa who are obviously boiling with rage themselves because they are, being held captive on Oa. So now, as you can see here, Atrocitus is kind of making his own lantern core, and, a brutal battle commences with these several red lanterns who they're very inexperienced. But I guess to describe Atrocitus's constructs versus a Green Lantern construct, it's just whatever will really just kill the person. He doesn't really care about finesse. It's all about power and rage and things like that. His emotions are basically just getting the better of him. So a brutal battle commences, and a distress call is sent out to other lanterns near Oa or on Oa to fight the Red Lanterns, keep them away from the Guardians. And at this moment, Sinestro, and they don't explain why the Guardians aren't fighting Atrocitus. We just know that they're sending Green Lanterns to fight them. And obviously Sinestro and his two escorts, receive the message, and the escorts return to Oa. And at this moment, Sinestro decides to return to Oa too, because he determines that he could probably steal his lantern back if, while all the other Green Lanterns are fighting, Atrocitus and stuff, he can get his lantern back, go back to Korrigar, and return to, ruling his planet, protecting his planet, in his opinion, protecting his planet, but really he's doing a very dictatorship rule of his planet, which is ruling by fear, and obviously that's not good. Sinestro, we now come back to Sinestro's point of view. He goes back to Oa and witnesses basically the slaughter of tons of Green Lanterns at the hands of just Atrocitus alone. Because Atrocitus' rage is just so massive. And every time, and just to get an idea of Atrocitus' psyche, every time he sees, a dead Green Lantern and the blood of that, it just reminds him of the death of his people even more. Like, he is really crazy. And it just upsets him even more because he's like thinking about the murder of all of his people, and he just wants to kill more Green Lanterns until he gets to the Guardians, and it's chaotic. So Hal Jordan and a bunch of other more experienced Green Lanterns join the fight, showing up, and Sinestro even joins in too, because in his opinion, because Sinestro doesn't want to kill the Guardians at this point, because the Guardians are the ones who allow him to have the Green Lantern ring. And Atrocitus, if Atrocitus kills the Guardians and kills the Central Power Battery, there's no way the Green Lantern ring will work anymore. Thus, there's no way Sinestro will be able to protect Korrigar. In his mind, protect Korrigar. So, out of that idea, or I guess, viewpoint of it, he decides to fight Atrocitus too. A long battle ensues. We get to see tons of awesome constructs. It's a really great visual moment in this film. But in a massive fit of rage, Atrocitus just creates a massive explosion, knocking out most Green Lanterns. And Sinestro, who's still considered one of the most powerful Green Lanterns in the Corps, he survives. Obviously he's hurt a little bit, but he survives. At this moment, Atrocitus is just going on a blind rage towards the Guardians, and Sinestro shoots a blast of energy at him, but it's not that powerful as the ring runs low on power. So Atrocitus pretty much just bats away Sinestro, and Sinestro decides to head to the Central Power Battery to charge his ring up some more. So at the Central Power Battery, Sinestro tries charging his ring, but it doesn't work because technically he's still under suspension, thus no lanterns will work with his ring. And he was only supposed to have enough energy to go back to Korrigar, so this is causing issues. And at this moment, that voice that was talking to him earlier tells him that if he really wants to defeat the Red Lanterns and return to protecting Korrigar, this is a very manipulative voice. He needs to forget about the Guardians' teachings and ideals and just embrace fear. Which sounds kind of odd to do, and after contemplating it for a while, Sinestro decides, well, the Guardians are fools with outdated ideals, and he decides to listen to the voice because all he wants to do is protect Korrigar. And if this is the way to do it, this is the way to do it. So the voice tells him to recharge his ring again, but this time with a new oath, which ends up becoming the Sinestro Core Oath. And Sinestro complies, which triggers an odd yellow light that's inside the Central Power Battery, which if you watched my first Green Lantern reboot, you know how it got there. That emerges, and it comes in Sinestro, And there we get a brief little origin about it. It's parallax and kind of explains how it got there through Sinestro's ring in the first movie. And it alters Sinestro's now dead Green Lantern ring to a yellow ring, able to harness yellow light. And it fully charges it up, but after this task, the entity goes back into the central power battery, claiming that it's not fully done resting yet, and it needs more time before it can fully come out. So now with the power of the yellow light, Sinestro goes to Atrocitus and takes the fight to him. What Sinestro does is he pretty much savagely just destroys many Red Lantern recruits that Atrocitus has, which causes fear in them, which just gives Sinestro more power. And Sinestro lets that get the better of him, and he just goes to town, and then eventually goes to Atrocitus, attacking him violently with yellow energy blasts and constructs also. So Hal Jordan, he awakens because, a lot of them got knocked out, like I said, and he sees this fight and joins in, helping Sinestro. Like, he doesn't know fully what's going on with Sinestro at this moment, but as far as he's concerned, Sinestro is still his partner. What they end up doing is combining their power in a dual blast, which causes Atrocitus to go, sending off into space. Like, he's not killed or anything, but he's sent flying away. And at this moment, the Red Lantern recruits see this, and out of fear of Sinestro mostly, they leave Oa. And Oa at this moment a lot of it is destroyed from the fight, and it's really ruined, and many Green Lanterns are injured. So Hal Jordan goes to help those injured Green Lanterns, while Sinestro roams around searching for an abandoned lantern from a dead Green Lantern, which he's going to use his new power to convert to a yellow lantern. Now, in the process, he finds one, but runs into the prisoner, Arkillo, who used to be who previously, as Sinestro recognizes, is a brilliant general that actually shares Sinestro's ideals. So, at this moment, Sinestro offers him the chance to become his lieutenant, which Arkillo accepts. So, Sinestro takes a dead Green Lantern's ring and converts it to a new Yellow Lantern ring. Arkillo and Sinestro head off to find more people to join his cause, now called the Sinestro Corps, and they're not bad guys yet, so there's nothing that says, they're immediately against the Guardians at all. And at this moment, the film ends with Hal Jordan again, and like the Guardian said he could, he's heading off to Earth, as it's been about 3 years since he first became a Green Lantern in the first movie, and left Earth originally. So that's the end of that. If you want to know what takes place after, this builds up to my Justice League movie. But before I get to that movie, I'm going to make the rest of my DC cinematic screenplays first off. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I try not talking too long, but I know this video is probably around 20 minutes. I hope you guys watched the whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If it doesn't make as much sense to you, feel free to comment below. I'll explain anything. I'm recording this really early, so if I, kind of sound weird, I feel I'll be more than happy to type an explanation for you. This has been Rage of the Red Lantern. The next movie will be War of the Light. If you can't tell by the title, there will be various cores involved. Hint, hint. But I can't wait to see you guys soon. I'm not going to tell you what the next sequel or next DC screenplay is going to be, but I will promise you guys should enjoy it. So without further ado, this is Hybrid. Please subscribe, comment, and like, and I'll see you guys later.